and welcome to today's session on overview of oil and gas production in India. I am Dr. Shivendu Saxena, working as assistant professor in the Department of Chemical Engineering, Parallel Institute of Technology, Parallel University. Today, we have Mr. Adnan Jafar Ansari, who is currently working for Deep Water and Field Development Department, Institute of Oil and Gas Production Technology as an executive engineer. He has joined ONGC in the year of 2012 as a graduate trainee in the production discipline. He is an undergraduate in chemical engineering from MJP Royal University in Bareilly. As a deep water and field development engineer, he has developed expertise in the field of flow assurance related challenges in shallow and deep water region of India through his association in varied range of projects involving flow assurance issues like wax, hydrates, heavy oil, surge, and slug flow in offshore oil and gas field of India. He has acquired an in-depth experience in steady state and transient modeling and simulation of multi-phase flow using state-of-the-art software like Prosper, PipeSim, and Olga. He has also developed expertise in field of development of marginal field in shallow and deep water region of India offshore. And overall, he has acquired good technical knowledge in the field of domain of deep water flow assurance problem and offshore field development. On behalf of Department of Chemical Engineering, Parallel Institute of Technology, Parallel Institute, I welcome you, sir, and we would like to hear from you. Sir.
Thank you, Shivendu. And let me share the presentation first and then we'll begin.
Sure, sir.
Is the presentation visible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It is visible.
Okay. So at the offset, let me thank first of all Parul University and special thanks to my dear friend, Assistant Professor Shivendu, for entrusting me with this opportunity to connect with you all guys and give a lecture on. It's not a lecture; it's kind of an interactive session that we think of on overview of oil and gas production in India. So, as already Shivendu has given a brief introduction about myself, so let me just give you a brief about myself in my words. So, myself, Adnan Zafar Ansari, I'm currently working as an executive engineer in production in Oil and Natural Gas Corporation Limited. So, it's I have joined this company in 2012 and as a graduate engineer trainee, and thereafter it's been 9 years since I've been working in Institute of Oil and Gas Production Technology, which is an integral part of Oil and Natural Gas Corporation Limited, which looks after the research and development projects of production related challenges we are facing in onshore and offshore field that we are producing all over India. So, this is my brief introduction. So, let us begin with the overview of oil and gas production in India. As I'm aware of that, most of the uh, people who are connecting with us are of chemical engineering discipline. So, I would like to keep a touch of that discipline in my overall presentation so that they will be aware of that what kind of roles and responsibilities that we actually have in our oil and gas industry, not only in India but globally. What kind of challenges, what kind of profiles does chemical engineers have been assigned for, and what kind of responsibilities they have been handling. So let us begin with our presentation first. So the outlines of my presentation will go as first of all we will talk about that why this oil and gas is required and how it is playing a major role in our life. Then we will be talking about oil and gas production history, in terms of its global scenario, as well as we will be talking about our Indian journey, how we have started oil and gas production, and what is the status as of now. And in depth, we will be talking about production technologies, how I mean, this hydrocarbons which are lying beneath the surface of our uh, earth, how we are digging it out, and what kind of technologies are needed, what kind of challenges are associated in it. So we will be talking about that also. And at the end, what is the future ahead for us in oil and gas industry, especially in regard to our Indian subcontinent. Uh, so the first question which comes in our mind, that where actually this hydrocarbons found. So I think most of you are aware of that. These are the hydrocarbons which are uh, contained or trapped in our subsurface uh, regions. Subsurface means that beneath the surface of the land. So they are uh, reserved, they are trapped in such conditions. So I will not be talking about how they are formed, because most of you are aware of it, that due to thermogenic process, these organic matter has converted into oil, and it is been, I mean, generated over a billion of years of life. And this is how oil is got entrapped in beneath the surface. So the primary things that we need to understand in terms of reservoirs is that there are two kind of, first of all, rock, where this oil formation and oil reservoir are there. So first, rock where actually it forms, where it actually generates, it is called source rock. Source rock is the rocks where it is generated, but it is not entrapped in those kind of rocks, because those are not permeable rocks or porous rocks. Because to entrap anything within that, it need to be porous in nature and permeable in nature. So generally, whatever oil and gas, or as such we call it as hydrocarbons, are entrapped in reservoir rocks. So reservoir rocks are generally sedimentary rocks, like sandstone, limestones, and they are highly porous and permeable in nature. So they have the characteristics which allows the oil or hydrocarbons to get entrapped in it. So you can see in this pictorial representation, where there is a reservoir rock, and this is an anticline petroleum trap. So this layer that you can see is kind of uh, reservoir. So there is a reservoir, and above that there is a salt water, and above that there is a gas. So if you see, this is called as oil water contact, right? So this is oil, this is water, and this is the reservoir rock. And from reservoir rock, it is being migrated to subside uh, channels, or through subside anticline structures. So, and this is the cap rock. Okay, so just to make you clear that how we actually extract, though we are be talking about those things in detail in our later sections. So a oil well is being drilled from land. It is, you can see, and if you have to produce gas, you are just drilling your well till the depth of free gas, where free gas zone is available. And if you have to extract oil, then you are drilling till the oil zone, and then you are producing from there. But this whole process, how we find this reservoir and where does it find, it is all geological and geophysical studies that we perform through our exploration divisions all over the India, onshore as well as offshore. So onshore means that on land, and offshore means in sea. So exploration activities are being carried out to find that where does we find these kind of reservoirs. So we will be not talking about in depth of those aspects of oil and gas industries. We will be restricting ourselves to the production technology basically. So this is just for your understanding that how this where we actually found this hydrocarbons, and then how we actually going to exploit this hydrocarbons from these kind of reservoirs. So as I have already mentioned that oil and gas, not only as a national energy, it is a very critical commodity, but for your in your day-to-day life you are surrounded with the products which are somewhere made from these petroleum products. So your life is full of products which are made from oil and gas. So if you can see, just look around at your home, you will find many things which are the byproducts of petroleum. So you can see that mobile phones, desks, curtains, or your pillows, sofas, headsets, car tires, and many other things, detergent. So these kind of toiletries, these kind of things are the products which are made from oil and gas as a raw material. And not only that, even if you exhaustively see in medical sciences, many of the components which we are using in day-to-day life in the healthcare section, uh, those are made from petroleum products like hearing aids, pacemakers, prosthetic limbs, and X-ray machines, your gloves, your PP equipment. So many things are there which are made from petroleum byproducts. So this is an integral commodity of our life, and as a matter of fact, it is the commodity which actually secures your energy security, uh, national energy security. So not only in terms of your day-to-day life, but as a national energy security, it is very critical commodity. So just we need to have a brief look on how this oil and gas production actually started globally, and what is the status as of now, how much we are producing, what is our energy consumption. So just we will go through some quick slides which will give you a brief insight regarding the global oil and gas production. So when we talk about the birth of modern oil and gas industry, it is way back around 150 years as of now, 150 to 160 years. So that is the timeline of when the modern oil and gas industry has begun its journey. So if you see in this pictorial, this is one of the oldest oil well. This is the world's first oil well. It is drilled in actually Pennsylvania, US, and only depth of digging, below the surface was only 21 meters. And this well has actually produced around 3,000 liters of oil a day. So, and you can see that they are extracting oil and it is being stored in these barrels. So this is how the barrel works, which is now a conventional unit for measuring crude oil barrels per day. So this is how this terminology actually comes into the picture. This crude oil is being stored in the barrels. So one barrel is somewhere equivalent to around 159 liters. So this well is called as Drake well because it is named after the person who is responsible for this. That is Colonel Edwin Drake. And this well actually initiated the modern oil and gas industry in many ways because the search for international oil and gas began with it. So this is a very biggest milestone that we have in our global oil and gas industry. Later on in 1896, from onshore we have moved towards the offshore, and this is the first well which has been drilled in offshore conditions, but it was a submerged well. So this is the first submerged well which is drilled in California, and you can see this is a platform like structure they have built, and over and above that there are rigs which are drilling the wells. Though the wells is on surface like conditions, but it is being drilled in the submerged environment. And this journey continues, and in 1947 we actually had the first offshore oil well through a platform. This is the rig, and this is the offshore platform where they have drilled one actual oil well in offshore environment. So these are the critical milestones of oil and gas industry, and from there onwards uh, it is keep on evolving, and today we have modern setup of production facilities on onshore and offshore. And in offshore, if you categorize, there are multiple regions like shallow water, deep water, ultra deep water. We'll be talking about those things based on the actually water depths of those regions. These main nomenclature for those fields are being generated. So, just to give you an insight of who are the biggest players in terms of oil production and share of the total world oil production. These are some of the latest figures that I could have fetched. So you can see that United States earlier, just back in 2010 on around 2010 on or so, United States was not a producer. They were producers, but they were not the largest producer. They were very much import dependent nation. But subsequently, in the last decade, they have exponentially increased their production capacities, domestic production capacities. They have ventured into shale oil and gas production, which is a very new area as of now for most of the E&P oil companies. So, United States as of now has become the largest oil producer, and they are producing around 18.6 million barrels per day. And in terms of overall share of the world, they are uh, responsible for 20% of production. And second, of course, it is coming as Saudi Arabia, which is producing around 11 million barrels per day, which is equivalent to 12%. And then Russia. So these and most of the other countries are from the Middle East, Gulf region. Uh, we all know that those are oil-rich countries, and they have very big reservoirs with them. So they are the top 10 players, and unfortunately, we do not list in it. So let us move on to who are the biggest consumers, who are the largest consumers. So there you can see that though United States is a very big producer, they are the largest producer, but still their consumption is very much high. Their domestic consumption is around 20.51 million barrels per day, which is again contributing to around 20% of the world share. And second, it comes as China, which is which has a consumption of around 13.89 million barrels per day, which is equivalent to 14% of total world share. And you would be I'm astonished to see that we are ranking number three in the world largest consumers for oil and gas, and our need is somewhere around 4.77 million barrels per day, which is equivalent to 5% of total world share. And so on. You can see Russia, Japan, Saudi, Brazil, and other countries. But we are in the top three in terms of largest oil consumers in the world. So, this was the insight regarding the global oil and gas industry and what is the status of production today. Now, we'll be talking about how it all started in India and how we are evolving and what is the status as of now. So, if you look at the key aspects of oil and gas industry in India, first of all, as in my opening slide, I have mentioned that where does we find this oil and gas or hydrocarbons? Those are rocks. What kind of rocks? That is sedimentary rocks. So first of all, we need to understand that does India has sedimentary rock basins? We call it as basins. So yes, of course, India has 26 sedimentary basins. It doesn't mean that having sedimentary basin itself assures you of oil and gas reservoirs. This is the first indicator that if you have sedimentary basin, then it is it is possible that there might be some hydrocarbon reserves. So exploration activities begin in India, and it is almost 65 to 70 years from now when we have started our exploration programs, and we have seen that India has a 26 sedimentary basin, out of which 44% is on land and 56% is offshore. And from there, they are categorized in three kind of basins. First of all, which are category one is called as the which are having reserves and are already producing, and category 2 are called that which has contingent resources, but those are not being exploited commercially or are yet to exploit commercially. And the third category is called as uh, prospective resources, where there are some prospective resources, but there has been no discovery as of now. Those are good prospects in terms of sands, sedimentary rocks, but though which are, I mean, good for a reservoir rock characteristics, but still no discovery has been struck over there. So if you see that we can see that in 2007 when there was oil has been struck in a region called Jaipur of Assam, and then one Assam railway trading company was set up to explore oil. This is pre-independence era, right? And then you can see that first commercial discovery was at Digboi, Assam. So at that time, there was a company called Burma Oil Company, which was responsible for this commercialization of this well. And then there was a setup of Assam Oil Syndicate, which is a refinery at Margarita. Then subsequent, this Burma Oil Company brought shares from ARTC and appointed commercial and technical managers. And just I'll skip to our Indian context. So in 1948, Industrial Policy Statement Oilfields Act has been established, and in 1954, Oil and Natural Gas Directorate comes into the picture, which subsequently in 1956 has been converted into ONGC, which is Oil and Natural Gas Commission, not corporation. So it was a commission at that time, and you can see that in 1974 we have our first offshore production, Mumbai High, which is a very iconic fields of India in Mumbai offshore, has been discovered. And then these are some of the policies, subsequent policies which are comes into the picture. NELP, HELP. NELP is a National Exploration and Licensing Policies, under which all the blocks or the discoveries which has been made for hydrocarbons were uh, nominated or were auctioned to oil and gas companies for further production and exploration. So these are the different timelines or milestone, you can say, which has actually uh, converted the oil and gas industry, which you can see as of now in so in Indian context. So again, this is some of the key milestones in terms of regularization and regulatory policies and regularization of oil and gas production in India. These are the actually, in India, we have a ministry, dedicated ministry for this, which is responsible for oil and gas production in India. That is Ministry of Oil and Petroleum and Natural Gas, MOPNG, and under which there is a directorate which actually regulates the oil and gas industries in India. That is called as DGH, Directorate General of Hydrocarbons, which look after the auctioning of blocks which is having oil and gas reservoirs or discoveries to different companies. And different companies, either those are national oil companies like ONGC, Oil India Limited, or private players like Reliance, Kane, SR, NTP, sorry, this Tata. So these are the players which are being entrusted with these blocks, and they further explore and produce from those fields. So time to time, ministry or oil regulators of India comes with different kind of policies which actually helps you in terms of commercialization of those fields, and helps you to enhance the production from your fields commercially. So this figure is very iconic in nature. That's why I keep a slide of it. Everyone is aware of 1 rupee note, and most of you may be aware of that. What is actually printed on it, or and many of you might not be knowing that what it is. So this is iconic Sagar Samrat drilling rig, which is being printed on a 1 rupee note back in time. So this is the first Sagar Sapra drilling rig which has been used in India for drilling in offshore environment. So in our Mumbai High, this was the rig which is responsible for the first wells in Mumbai offshore. So this is a very iconic rig, and that's why it has become a legend, and it has been imprinted on our denomination note. So, if you see that the primary, if we see historically the energy demand in India, so out of other non renewables like coal or other traditional biomass, we can see that oil has always been in demand. Natural gas is keep on increasing its demand in India, but oil definitely has been increasing ever since from, if we see from 2000 onwards, this percentage share is keep on increasing. So we have actually tripled our energy demand from 2000 to 2020, and mostly we are dependent on coal and oil in terms of our energy demands. So, if you see the mm, trade and production of coal, oil, and gas in India, so you can see that for oil, our production is somewhere stagnant. Domestic production from 2000 to 2019, for almost 2 decades, it is pretty much stagnant. However, our imports are keep on increasing. So from 2020 onwards to this time, we have actually more than double our imports. And similarly, you can see in gas, however, we have started off quite nice, and we have enhanced our domestic gas production. This is the time when Reliance is producing from its KG98 field, Dhirubhai Ambani field of eastern offshore of India, and they have ramped up their production, and we had uh, a healthy gas production in India. But you can see still the imports, we are pretty much dependent on imports in terms of oil and gas domestically. So if we talk about our imports and production, so you can see that if we see year to year, our oil imports are, pretty much around 4.5 million barrels per day. However, our domestic production is somewhere around 0.72 to 0.64 million barrels per day. So this is our domestic production, and this is the imports, oil imports year to year. If you can see, this is still, this financial is going on. Still, you can see that we are having a this orange bar that is showing that imports are going on. Similar is the case in gas production, but in terms of gas, we are somewhere producing quite enough amount of gas domestically also. So domestic production is quite good, but gas imports are also, I mean, very high. It is somewhere around equal to 50-50% ratio. If we see companies wise share of our Indian oil production, domestic oil production, so around 20 millions metric ton of year to year production is being generated by ONGC, which is the largest player of India, which is contributing around 65 to 70% of our uh, domestic oil production. And then it comes Oil India Limited, which is accountable for around 3.3 to 3.4 million metric tons of oil production year to year basis. And there is a quite around 20% share interest, 20 to 25% share interest from the private players like Reliance, then Vedanta Kane Energy, which is operating in our Rajasthan fields. So this is the oil production scenario as of now in India. And this particular graph is showing the development drilling activities. So far in offshore, we have drilled in this particular year itself, financial year 19 itself, we have drilled another 63 production wells. In onshore, we have drilled 338 uh, wells, and it is a meterage. How much meter of wells we have drilled. So these are 165 kms, and this is 649 kms, 1000 meters, right? Meterage in 1000 meters. So if we split off, if we see in a broad aspects of oil and gas industry, so there are basically three sectors. One is upstream industry, Second is called as midstream, and third is called as downstream. So upstream industry are basically the industry which is responsible for oil and gas exploration and production. This production might be from onshore fields or offshore fields, and then there comes into the play the midstream industries, which is responsible for storage and pipelines. So some of the aspects of midstreams are being handled by the upstream companies itself, but there are some dedicated companies also which are handling midstream business, like GAIL, Gas Authority of India Limited, which is responsible for gas transportation through the national gas grids across the country. So they are responsible for transmission and delivery of natural gas pan India. And then the last sector, which is called as downstream industries, which are responsible for refining your hydrocarbons, and they commercialize into different kind of products like diesel, kerosene, petrol, lubricants, many other such things. Okay, and they are also feeding to many petrochemical companies which are using their products as a raw material for generation of other products like plastics, fertilizers, medical pharmaceuticals, power. So those are the companies which are dependent on these downstream companies. So we are, as I mean, in India, if you talk about production, the production is being handled by upstream oil and gas companies. And if you see broadly the activities which are involved in the upstream oil and gas business, the first one is called as exploration. Exploration means you have to first discover the oil and gas, either in onshore environment and offshore environment. You have to first struck the discoveries, and then those exploration activities actually involves geological and geophysical studies, surveys, seismic surveys. Those things are, I mean, a specialized domain which are being handled by geoscientists, geologists, geophysicists. This is a domain expertise of those streams. When it comes to drilling and development, so first of all, we need to plan the field. How you have to plan how you are going to develop the field, and then comes into the picture the engineering and construction. You have to in place the facilities which are required to develop those fields. Then the development drilling comes into the play. You have to drill the wells, and then it has to be hooked up to the facilities which are required for processing it and further transporting it to the refineries or to the sales point. And then in production, we have wells which need to be completed. So that is called as well completion. Then the operations, you have to operate the fields. There are process systems, process facilities in there which are being used for processing this oil and gas and further transportation of it. And then, of course, if anything happens in your well, you have to intervene in your well, and you have to do the required job, which is there to enhance the production from those wells if it is being declined. So we will see that what is the field development process as such. So I'll not be giving you more technical elaboration on it because it might not be of your use as of now. But I would like to, I mean, give you an insight that how this field development process is being taken place and how we actually commercialize any field. So there are different phases or activities involved in production of the field techno-economically, right from the discovery of it. So first of all, if you see, the first phase is the discovery. You have to know that where is the field. Then it doesn't mean that if it is a discovery or you have found oil and gas, you have to produce it. It doesn't mean that, because The first statement itself is very important, that it has to be produced techno-economically. So it should be economical enough to produce from those reservoirs or discoveries. So every discovery is not see the day of light in terms of commercialization. Okay. So next phase is evaluation of it. You have to evaluate that how much amount of reserves are there. If those reserves are techno-economically feasible, after evaluation, actually you will be hearing two kind of words as such. One is called OIIP and another is GIIP. OIIP means oil in place volumes and GIIP means gas in place volumes. So after evaluating, if you have good reserves, feasible, techno-economically feasible reserves, then we see that how this field can be developed, how many wells are required, what kind of production facilities are required. You have to design those facilities for that, and then it has to be executed. And then comes the phase of production from where actually you produce from the field. And lastly, if you have exploited the techno-economical limit from those fields, the field need to be abandoned. So if you typically see the life of any field, so you can see that 5 to 10 years itself you are spending around in exploration phase itself, where you are discovering and evaluating. So it is a very exhaustive and complex job as such, right? And right from development till the life of production abandonment, it is typically around 15 to 30 years. So you can see that this activity has a bigger role because it is very complex in nature and you have to understand your reservoirs before developing it. So we will be talking about those facilities and what are the things required for the development and production of oil and gas. So as I've said that first of all a discovery has to be done. You have to see that did you find oil or not. So if you can see, this is a representative picture that I have put up in this slide, which is showing you the eastern offshore of India. Andhra Pradesh and Telangana region, there is an offshore area near to that, which is called as eastern offshore area. So there, these are the discoveries, these are the blocks, these are the fields which we have there, where we find oil and gas. So this is how you discover the fields. Then it has to be evaluated. I mean, you have to see that what is the stock tank oil in place volumes, GIIP, STOIIP. These things, the volumes of the reservoirs there in this field has to be evaluated. This is a very big exercise. You need to carry out appraisal drillings of many wells to understand what is the limit of the reservoir and till what extent it has been spreaded and extended, and what is the area of the reservoir, and then what is the pay thickness where we are finding this oil and gas reservoir, and then you comes to these figures like in place volumes, what we call. Then comes the field development and planning process. You have to plan the process. There are different concepts of developing this field, any field, and it has to be techno-economically, I mean, feasible. So different concepts are being evaluated, and whichever is the most techno-economical concept that is being concerned for that's concern for the field development, and it is being studied in detail, and on that feed studies are being carried out. Feed studies means front end engineering design. So if your concept is techno-economically feasible, then we carry out front end engineering design on those concepts, and there will be actual engineering will be carried out for the design of those facilities. So this is, I mean, just to show that it is a very complex process. It requires many inputs, and there are very uncertainty because this oil and gas reservoirs are very uncertain. You might be not knowing the intricacies of those reservoirs. Your predictions, your estimations may go wrong because of any critical parameter which has not been estimated correctly. So there is a so much factor of uncertainty involved in reservoir estimations, and then decisions, reservoir simulations, productions concept selections, then techno-economics. This concept selection requires many production design and multi-phase simulations, transient and steady state simulations are being carried out during this phase. Then techno-economics has to be carried out, that whether it is economical in nature or not. Then if it is economical, we have a good profitability from those projects. Then it will go for execution phase. And lastly, when you uh, in offshore environment or in onshore, you cannot leave your facilities in there if your production is over. You have by environmental laws and the international sea laws says that you have to dismantle your facilities. They should not become the obstruction for sea travels and sea vessels which are operating in those areas. So you have to dismantle your facilities, and of course dismantling in itself bring an element of cost. So, but uh, as per the international regulations, you have to abandon the field in a correct way. So this is just a slide which is showing you what is the influence. I mean, how this concept phase is very important. The right choice of development concept is very important. Though the cost, relative cost, is very low in it, but the influence on overall cost is the highest of this phase, the concept phase or the feed phase, front end engineering design phase. So though the actual cost which we are going to spend on this concept phase is very low, 3% of the total cost, but the relative influence of this phase is very high in terms of overall oil and gas capital expenditure. Because if something is goes wrong, then it will, I mean, make or break your project. Then this is engineering, E for engineering, procurement, construction, and finally implementation. So these, in general, you have heard of EPC contractors. They are termed as EPC contractors, engineering, procurement, and construction. So those are responsible for all the engineering work, and finally implementation of it. Now we'll be a little bit talking about the drilling aspects. Uh, Drilling, you might be heard of. We are not going to touch those things in detail over here, but we will be touching upon what are the drilling techniques and how these wells are being drilled actually. So, cable tool drilling technique, it is the oldest technique which was being used in the earlier times of oil and gas drilling. Then comes into the picture the rotary drilling technique. It is the technique which is still being used manywhere. And now we have advanced technologies also, which are called as laser technology and petroleum drilling. So this is a very indicative diagram of cable tool drilling. So as the name suggests, they dug the hole through one cable, which there is a bit, drill bit, just like you have seen drilling machines. It is working like the same, but it does not have rotary equipments much in it. It is being hammered like. So weight of this strings, drill stems, along with the bit, is being hammered in the surface. So this is the oldest technique, and many where there are many limitations to it. We cannot drill deviated wells from these wells, because it does not have any rotary equipment in it, and those are very fragile in nature. And the rate of drilling is very slow in it, because you have to keep on hammering the weight again and again. So it was a very cumbersome process, but it was the oldest technology which has been evolved into rotary drilling technology, where there is a rotary equipment which rotates this drill stem, which has a rotary drill bit. This is a drill collar. This is a drill bit. There are sharp components attached to it, which actually drill the subsurface. So now we are using manywhere this kind of drilling technique, rotary drilling techniques. And this is just to show that wells have different kind of profiles. It is not like you have only vertical well could be drilled from this place in this kind of S turn profile. This is called as S profile. You can have this long radius, which is called as a deviated profile. You can have this kind of flow profile of drilling from this rig. You can have horizontal flow, that means till somewhere it is slant and then it is totally horizontal you are drilling it. And there could be lateral drillings, that from one string you have different zones. This zone might be having oil, this might be having gas, again this might be having oil. So we have different zones, right? So these are different kind of drilling techniques we have. This is the most advanced technology, which is called as laser technology, and which is very fast in nature and very precise. The actual zone where you have to drill and complete your well, it is because of it is laser guided. So the profile where what you are going to reach through drilling would be very precise and accurate in nature. Though it is very costly drilling, this requires a special kind of tools, a special kind of drilling rigs. So this is a very costly drilling technique. So if you see that drilling rigs are categorized into basically land rigs and marine rigs, which are used for offshore environment. In marine rigs, there are bottom supported rigs, like they are jacket on which platforms on which the rigs are being supported. And there are floating rigs, which are like drill ships. There are ships, floating ships on which drill rigs are being placed. I'm not going in details of those things, it might not be relevant here. So this is just a pictorial representation of how this drilling rigs are actually looking like. So this is one of the oldest cable tool drilling rig. This is the land drilling rig, rotary drilling rig, which we are frequently using in our on land drilling operations. And this is a jackup rig. See, there is a platform and rig is supported on this platform, and it is being drilling the wells. And this is a drill ship, floating ship, where there is a drilling rig in it. You can move this drill ship anywhere, any location, but here in jackup you have to uh, move the whole platform itself uh, to, I mean, move it to some other location. So this is another pictorial representation. This is a fixed platform. See, this is fixed on the platform. This is a semi tension leg platform. It is used in higher water depths. This is also tension leg. This is a floating production system, which are being used in higher water depths for drilling purpose and production. This is a semi-submersible platform, which is being used in deep water environments. I mean, water depth is quite high. You can see almost around 1200 meter beyond, 1500 meter beyond. These kind of systems are being used. Now comes to the well completion. So when we complete a well, so there are different elements into it. This is the yellow portion is called as the tubing, from which actually this yellow portion is the reservoir, which is being perforated so that oil and gas can move from reservoir to the bottom hole which has been drilled. And in this drilled bottom hole, you placed your tubing, and there are casings. These are the different surface casings to it, which is there for structural integrity of the well, based on what kind of depths we are going on, what kind of sand is there, uh, what kind of rocks are there in the well when we have drilled. Based on that, the number of casings and what kind of casings are there, it has been decided. And from the production point of view, we are interested in this tubing. Once this tubing is placed in this lower down to the reservoir depth, then this oil and gas will start coming into this is a packer, so that the annulus region which is free from this production casing and this tubing should not get any kind of hydrocarbons in that. So these are called as packer. So this is a very simple diagram that we just show to make you understand that what is a typical well. It is a very complex in nature. Otherwise, there are many elements into it, but here we are talking about this the in general what is a oil well or gas well looks like. So I think this is pretty much the same, which is showing the types of well completion. I'm not going to get into the details of it. Based on different zones and different reservoirs, we complete these wells differently. Uh, yes, this is one of the point where we am showing that from the single drilling of the bore hole, we can place multiple strings, multiple tubings, production tubings in the well. So from this one well itself, we have three production tubing, which are lowered to different producing zones. These are different producing formations, and we started producing from three different layers from one well through different completion strengths. This is a horizontal completion just to show you that all wells are not only vertical and deviated in nature, they might be horizontal in nature also. So these kind of wells are also there. These are the different completion equipments. I don't think that would be relevant to know at this moment of time. We have already talked about multilateral completion. Two layers are there, and then we are completing different wells. See, this kind of completion, various multilateral configuration you can actually achieve. There's multi-branch, forked laterals, stacked laterals, dual opposing laterals. So from one drilling location, you can, I mean, drill three different multiple zones in this kind of multiple zones in these kind of manner configurations. Then coming on to onshore production facilities. Uh, so this is the typical.
Sir,
Yes.
so I'm sorry, sir, to interrupt. Sir, we have time limitations.
Okay, I'll
So,
take another 5 minutes to uh, complete it. Actually, we are somewhere close to our end of the
okay,
slides only.
okay, okay, sir.
So if you see that this is a typical process facilities which are being used in onshore. So you have wells. Once you have wells, then it is being produced, and it is being as I've already told you that it need to be processed before sending it to refineries or for further processing and transportation and sales. This whatever oil and gas we are producing, it is being first of all separate out. Production separators are there which separates the oil and gas, and then the solution gas is being sent to compressions if it is requiring any kind of compression before gas processing module, where it is being processed into different elements. And oil after processing, after separation, is for going for crude oil storage and transportation. And this processed gas, whatever we are getting from our natural gas, it is being sent to different industries like LNG, liquefaction, if it is NGLs, or subsequently it is being transmitted for the sales in different markets. So this is a typical process overview of processing facilities at onshore. So these are basically simple representation of that only. So I'll skip those slides because those are very detailed in nature. I'll just represent you another one slide that I would like to show. Yes, this is the typical offshore process complex. If you can see that there is a offshore process complex, there is a drilling rig into it. Then this is a location where uh, this is called as living quarters, where there are living quarters. Then there are process facilities attached to it, where you actually process the oil and gas which is coming from different pipelines into this facility. And then there are different kind of other facilities like wastewater treatment and effluent treatment, gas flaring. So this is a typical offshore platform that you can see. And this is the typical process flow diagram of offshore process facilities, from where the you are having your production from the oil and gas reservoir, which is coming onto these platforms, which is having dedicated process facilities like separation and stabilization and gas dehydration, compression, produce water treatment. And after that it is being fed to the downstream companies for further processing its uh, uh, and its sales. So this was the typical diagram. Similarly, this is for gas compression that I don't think that we will show. So offshore production systems are basically divided into fixed and floating that we have already seen. There are different classification to it. I don't think that we'll go into those kind of details as of now. So I think this is that is all from my side. I open this forum for any question if you have any queries that you would like to ask. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for this informative session and sharing with us the valuable information about the oil and gas production globally and around the Indian scenario, and also related to the field development process, drilling and well completion process. So, I have a one question from
Yes,
one
yes.
student. It is not related to this uh, directly related to oil and gas production, but as a chemical engineering,
Yeah,
what
yeah.
is the role of chemical engineering production department in oil and gas production companies and
I
organizations?
think many of the chemical engineering aspirants or who are pursuing chemical engineering uh, are intrigued about this query. So I would like to answer in detail about that. So in oil and gas industry, typically in upstream industry, if you see, as I have mentioned that right from the production to the processing, chemical engineers are involved in it. See, we are producing multi-phase fluid, oil, gas, and water all together. And oil itself is constituent of different carbon number chains of like alkanes, aromatics, and naphthanates, asphaltenes. There are different compositions in the carbon. Sorry, this oil, crude oil. So this is multi-phase flow. You have to understand the thermodynamics, its fluid mechanics. So chemical engineers are definitely involved in the designing of these facilities. Either it is pipelines or tubings for the well flow, and the process facilities which we have just seen in the last couple of slides. The whole process facilities are being operated by chemical engineers, and many of the chemical engineers are involved in the designing of these process systems also. So, in upstream oil and gas industry, chemical engineers have a very, I can say that as a driving role in it. And you all are aware that in the downstream industries and midstream industries, chemical engineers are very much dominant there. In refineries, like downstream companies like Indian Oil, HPCL, Reliance, BPCL, everywhere chemical engineers have a driving positions. I think this might have answered your question. Thank you.
Okay, sir. So one more question is, as
Yes.
I mentioned, the different softwares which you are working on. Okay. So from where we can learn it about these softwares?
Actually, many of the softwares are very highly specialized in nature, like PipeSim, Olga, which are industry dominant softwares, and there is one company which is actually licensed these softwares, which is called as Schlumberger. This is an international company which actually license the softwares. So these might not be available in the open market as such or for student purpose, but in many engineering institutes which have petroleum discipline there, they have the student license for this, for learning. However, for chemical engineers there is a very comprehensive software which is called as aspen plus, which do process simulations and modeling. So that is very useful, and I think chemical engineers should have a knowledge of that software, because in many industries that software is being used and it is very dominant in terms of process modeling and simulations. So if you got an opportunity, then even institutes can license this from the Aspen company. Aspen is the company, and even they provide students license to the institutes and universities. If you will contact them, then they can provide you the license for school use, because for academics use, because the cost for the industrial packages what they give and the cost of academic packages they give is very different. Industrial ones are very expensive in nature, so you may have a interaction with Spin Plus. If you require, I can share the contact numbers of those vendors with you. You can have, as an institute or university, you can have a word with them for procuring those softwares.
Okay, sir. Sure, sir. So, sir, that's it from my side also. So,
Okay,
thank you so
thank
much,
you.
sir. So, thank you, sir. We appreciate you making time in your busy schedule to speak, and especially in weekends. So,
Yes, yes.
thank you once again
No,
for your
it
time.
is a pleasure connecting with you all, and it comes me down to my academic life, and it is a good interactive session with you all. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.